It is the SMT Media Network, and we're back with another episode here to discuss the association. The New York Knicks are hot. After I proclaimed that they were just a regular, average team at the start of the season, I must say that they have really picked things up, and they've really found a pretty solid process for them to win. And I want to give them their flowers and discuss how good they've gotten, and admit that I was wrong, because I think the way they're playing is sustainable, and it's something that can actually propel them to be a contender in the East. And I'm not talking about winning a championship. I don't think it's that. But I think they are easily a team that could win a round or two in the playoffs. And if things were to go their way, could maybe compete in the Eastern Conference Finals. So I want to discuss those things. I want to talk about the team, the players, how things are going, and why I think the New York Knicks are better than what some people give them credit for, including myself. All right, so for starters, the Knicks are currently third standing in the Eastern Conference. They've won 7 of their last 10 games. They have a 15-8 record away. In fact, they're basically as good away as they are at home, which is, I think, a hallmark of a good team. You got to win your away games. You got to win in other teams' gyms. Currently at 32-16, they find themselves 7 games back of the Cleveland Cavaliers for the first position in seeding in the Eastern Conference. Puts them, say about maybe a game and a half behind the Celtics. They're really, really close. And they've got a little bit of space between them and the Milwaukee Bucks, who come in fourth. All right, so things have been pretty good for the Knicks lately. I'd say the last month, they've played some really, really good quality basketball. And I think it's come at the production of their starters. Before I get into the individual players, just check out some of these highlights from their season so far. Offensively, they average about 118 points a game. That puts them 4th in the league. And then with respect to their scoring margin, they're number 5. And then some of their strengths, they're number 4 in points in the paint, number 5 in assist to turnover ratio, number 4 in their turnovers per game. They really do a nice job of taking care of the ball and not turning it over. I think a hallmark of a team that is very well coached. Their effective field goal percentage ranks number 3 in the league, and their three-point percentage ranks number 5 in the league. They don't rank highly in three-point attempts, but when they take them, they make them. And then with respect to defensively, they're giving up about 111 points a game, which puts them 8th. They're very good in that side of the ball. I think some of their concerns, I think it's the rebounding. They rank number 23 in the league, and then points in the paint defense, they rank 20th in the league. And I think that has to do with kind of their roster composition, right? When you have Karl Anthony Towns as your anchor defensively in the paint, it's not going to be the best outcome. He is clearly an offensively special talent at the position, but defensively he leaves a lot to be desired. I also think with respect to kind of individual statistics, if we can look at some of these players, what I notice is they're carried by a couple of big stars, right? Jalen Brunson, 26 points a game. Karl Anthony Towns, just a tick under 25 points a game. Those guys do a lot of the heavy lifting from an offensive standpoint. With respect to kind of the supporting cast, Mikal Bridges averages about 18. That's pretty nice. OG Anunoby gives you about 16. And then Josh Hart gets you about 14 a game. But that's it. Those are the guys that have you in double-digit scoring. And then if I look at total rebounds, who's carrying the mail there? Karl Anthony Towns at about 14 a game. Josh Hart is a shooting guard, and he averages 10 rebounds a game. I don't know if this is out of necessity. I don't know if Josh Hart's always been a good rebounder. I'll have to go back and look at some of those Lakers seasons. But in New York, he's a rebounder, right? So those guys are really important to what they do. And again, I don't think their rebounding is very good, and I think it's a testament to their, roster construction. Jalen Brunson leads the team in assists, 7.5 a game. Josh Hart comes in second at 5.7 a game. And then Karl Anthony Towns will get you about 3.5 a game. From the steals category, Josh Hart, a very good defender, 1.6 steals a game. OG Anunoby gets you about 1.4 steals a game. Those are kind of like your best defenders, I would say, on your team. And then blocks, nobody even averages 1 block a game. So while their team defense is good, in my estimation, they don't have an imposing force to redirect shots from the rim. It's going to be more about rotations. It's going to be more about locking up guys on the perimeter and those types of things, and kind of how they get their stops that way and then getting the rebound, right? Holding teams to one shot. And then with respect to turnovers, Karl Anthony Towns actually leads the team in turnovers per game at 2.5. And then Jalen Brunson, who I think, even though he's a phenomenal player and most people know it, I still think he's slightly underrated. He only averages like 2.3 turnovers a game, right? So his assist to turnover ratio is pretty clean, right? It sits at about, I think it's even better than about 3-1, which in my estimation, comparatively to his usage rate, that's pretty good, right? But anyways, taking a look at the minutes, which I think is important because this is going to wrap up this video. The Knicks have their guys playing a lot of minutes. By that, I mean the starters. Mikal Bridges averages 38 a game. Josh Hart averages almost 38 a game. OG Anunoby averages about 37 a game. Brunson and Towns are closer to 35 a game. They try to give those guys some rest. Would be a smart thing to do. And then to kind of round things out, McBride comes in at about 23 a game off the bench. And I think Campaign's about 15 a game. Like, those are kind of your main guys. I think this team, while I think their ceiling is potentially the Eastern Conference Finals should some things go their way, I think it's going to be difficult for them to get there because the teams that they're going to be up against, for example, the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics, namely those two teams in front of them, they have deep rosters. And those guys have all-star starting caliber players. The Knicks have really good starters, but their bench is limited, and I don't think it's developed enough and they've been given enough opportunity to really show and prove in certain moments. They don't get a lot of run. And I know how Tom Thibodeau operates. He trusts his starters. He trusts in his guys, and I get that, and I respect it. But if you're going to make noise in the playoffs, like, you need a rotation of at least a couple of guys who could come in off the bench and get you some points. So as of right now, you're looking at McBride and you're looking at Campaign, getting you some points. None of them can get you double-digit scoring on a consistent basis. So your ceiling is connected to Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns on an offensive basis. The other starters, they can be iced out of games. I've seen games where they don't produce much, but that's how that thing works. Every team is constructed that way. But if I don't have a guy off the bench who can possibly come in when the starters don't particularly have it that night, you're going to need that. And I don't think the Knicks have that. I've seen games where the Knicks have gotten blown out and been uncompetitive because their starters were just off. So if your starters are off, let's say Brunson and Cat, they're below average, right, for the game. They just don't have it that night. The Knicks are going to get blown out of the water. That's the only thing I will say is truly limited about the Knicks. I think the starters are fantastic. I think the bench is limited. I think the heavy reliance on a couple of guys for scoring, it kind of limits their upside. I think Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson are incredible talents. I think Josh Hart and OG Anunoby are really good players. That's just not enough to win in this league on a consistent basis. If those guys don't perform optimally, they're probably not going to win a game, up against the Celtics and the Cavs, who night in and night out are more consistent in a lot of those ways. So I don't mean to pour cold water on the Knicks. I'm just looking at it from a realistic standpoint. Their main competitors that they're thinking about are teams that are deeper, more consistent, and have more balance on pretty much all levels of the game. I like the Knicks. I think they're a good team. They have a good coach. They have really good stars. And they have a couple of nice supplemental players. But it's a roster that clearly has its limitations. And because of their roster construction, their best two players actually aren't very good defenders. Maybe Brunson's a little bit better than I give him credit for on defense, but I don't think Cat's a good defender. I know he tries hard. I see it sometimes, but he's just not, right? His excellence comes on the offensive side. And I think about all those factors, and the Knicks are currently third in the East. I think they're destined to be third in the East. I think that's where they're going to finish. Could they pass the Celtics? Yeah, I guess if the Celtics continue to underperform, maybe they go on a bad skid. Maybe the Knicks could move up to second, but they're not going to catch the Cavs. And I also don't think that they will beat the Cavs in the playoffs either. I think between the Cavs' new system, new coach, new philosophy, and new culture, I think the Cavs beat the Knicks in 5. And the reason I think that is because I want to give the Knicks some credit. I believe that Brunson and Cat, Tom Thibodeau, OG, Josh Hart, I think those guys are good enough to win a game against the Cavs. I just think the Cavs are too much. And then when I look at the Celtics have Jaylen Brown. The Celtics have Jason Tatum. Pritchard is a nice player off the bench. They have a championship pedigree. Kristaps Porzingis is a matchup nightmare. That's a lot to overcome for the Knicks. They don't match up well against the Celtics. As tough as I think the Knicks are, I want to give them some respect. I think they lose that series in 5. I think the Knicks can beat the Bucks. I think that's a tough series. I think that series goes 7 games. I think they give Giannis problems because I trust that Tom Thibodeau gets his guys in a position to where they make his life hard. I think that's a series where the Bucks could win in 7. I think the Knicks could win in 7. It's tough. I really like the Knicks, but I understand the limitations. Maybe you guys agree with me. Maybe you disagree with me. I'm excited to read what you guys have to say on the Knicks in the comments section. What do you guys think of their duo? What do you think of their team construction, their performance so far this year? I personally think they've been overachieving. I like what I'm seeing. Who knows, things could change. There's a trade deadline that's up and coming. We'll see what happens. If anything changes, we'll be sure to update with a new video, my take on the Knicks. What's yours? Excited to read what you guys have to say on it. Like and share. Subscribe if you're new here. We'll see you on the next video.